Item. SCP-220. Object Class. Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-220 is housed in an empty condominium on property recently acquired by Research Sector 09. The subject believes the building to be occupied by other residents, and should be allowed to persist in this belief. A false bus stop has been installed near the building's entrance. This measure has proven sufficient in deterring SCP-220 from wandering outside the containment perimeter. SCP-220 exhibits trepidation when venturing beyond the building's lobby, most likely due to mobility challenges. The subject will sometimes remain seated at the bus stop for upwards of 1 hour, before returning indoors. SCP-220's room has been provided with a telephone connected to an automated recording service, ostensibly a courtesy of the residents. Dietary, medical, and recreational needs are to be ascertained from these recordings and several live video feeds. New requests should be submitted to Dr. Hart for approval or denial. In light of Incident 220-P, only D-Class subjects are approved for in-person contact with SCP-220 and should be immediately quarantined after testing, in accordance with Sector 9's Type 2 contagion procedure. Description: SCP-220 is a multiracial, English-speaking human male, aged 76 years as of the 15th of May 2012. SCP-220 presents behaviors symptomatic of dissociative identity disorder, alternately referring to himself and behaving as one of two distinct identities. It is uncertain whether SCP-220 is affected by a psychological disorder or is deliberately playing the role of two persons. In SCP-220's public and private behavior, the identity of Ormond Garibaldi alternates with that of Ollie G., a name which corresponds with the subject's birth certificate. Any individual who interacts with SCP-220 in person will be fully convinced that these identities are two separate persons. Two variations of this phenomenon have been observed. SCP-220 presents as Ollie or Ormond and refers to the other persona as a friend or relative. In this case, even when they have been previously informed of SCP-220's condition, test subjects unhesitatingly accept SCP-220's statements as fact. SCP-220 presents as Ollie or Ormond and switches identities during the course of the conversation. The differences between these two personas are not drastic, but recordings demonstrate that the switch is always accompanied by a marked change in posture, tone of voice and rhythm of speech, and personality. Nevertheless, SCP-220's conversation partner will not perceive a change, but react as if one individual has left the room and a second entered in their place. In rare cases, test subjects will behave as if they are conversing with both Ollie and Ormond at the same time. Despite the anomalous nature of these conversations, test subjects never exhibit fear or distress during or when asked to recall time spent with SCP-220. The effects of SCP-220 are irreversible, regardless of whether an individual is informed of SCP-220's nature before and or after the in-person test. Within 4-6 hours of contact with SCP-220, affected individuals will begin to display signs of slight disorientation, forgetting their purpose in entering a room or the subject of a conversation. This disorientation gives way to a permanent state of identity confusion. Affected individuals will begin to perceive every person they come into contact with as two distinct individuals. The afflicted will address a single person either as if they are speaking to two people at once, or alternating between two distinct conversations. The majority of affected subjects perceive one of these illusory identities as a close friend or relative, regardless of appearances or whether their conversational partner is a stranger or acquaintance.